A man and a little boy walked into a barber shop together. The man settled in for the works: a shave, shampoo, manicure, and haircut. Once he was done, he placed the boy in the chair and said, "I'm going to buy a green tie for the parade. I'll be back in a few minutes." The barber finished the boy's haircut, but the man hadn't returned. The barber looked at the boy and said, "Looks like your dad forgot about you." The boy shook his head and replied, "That's not my dad. He just grabbed my hand outside and said, 'Come on, kid, let's go get a free haircut.'" A newlywed couple lies in bed, enjoying a quiet moment together. Curiosity gets the best of the husband, and he gently asks his wife, "How many men have you been with?" The wife remains silent, staring intently at the ceiling. The husband, thinking she didn't hear him, asks again, "Come on, you can tell me. How many men have you been with?" Still, the wife says nothing, her eyes fixed above. Feeling a bit guilty, the husband apologizes. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. I just thought we could share everything with each other." Despite his words, the wife continues her silence. The husband, now feeling a bit defeated, says, "That's okay, don't worry about it." Determined to show his love, the husband cuddles closer to his wife, showering her with hugs and kisses. Suddenly, the wife snaps out of her silence. With a frustrated look, she turns to her husband and exclaims, "Oh, come on! You've made me lose count." George went for his annual checkup every year. He prided himself on staying fit and healthy by going on walks in the neighborhood, though age had taken its toll on his eyesight. After his checkup, George sat and chattered with his doctor, proudly telling Dr. Stevens about his latest discovery. "Doc, I'm blessed," he said. "God knows my eyesight is going. So he puts on the light when I pee and turns it off when I'm done." The doctor chuckled, but a nagging curiosity led him to call George's wife later that day. "Maria," he said, "your husband's test results are just fine. But he said something strange. He claims that God turns the lights on and off for him when he uses the bathroom at night." George's wife laughed out loud. "That old fool, he's been peeing in the refrigerator again. I thought it was the dog." At a high school reunion, a group of people were having a chat, looking back on their childhood. One of the guys said, "I used to look really pretty, and my mom always took care of my looks, so everyone thought I was a girl." Another replied, "That definitely caused a lot of trouble. Yeah, even the PE teacher thought I was a girl and sorted me into the girls' group. So eventually, my mom decided to cut my hair short so I look more like a boy." The guy continued, "Of course the teacher was surprised, so did some other kids. But the most surprised of them all was the boy who used to carry my textbooks to lessons." A young banker decided to get his first tailor-made suit. So he went to the finest tailor in town and got measured for a suit. A week later, he went in for his first fitting. He put on the suit and he looked fabulous. He felt that in this suit he can do business. As he was preening himself in front of the mirror, he reached down to put his hands in the pockets, and to his surprise, he noticed that there were no pockets. He mentioned this to the tailor, who asked him, "Didn't you tell me you were a banker?" The young man answered, "Yes, I did." To this, the tailor said, "Who ever heard of a banker with his hands in his own pockets?" A drunk man gets up from the restaurant and heads for the bathroom. A few minutes later, a blood-curdling scream is heard coming from the bathroom. A few minutes after that, another loud scream reverberates through the restaurant. The waiter goes into the bathroom to investigate why the drunk man is screaming. "What's all the screaming about in there?" he yells. "You're scaring my customers." "I'm just sitting here on the toilet," slurs the drunk, "and every time I try to flush, something comes up and squeezes the out of my balls." With that, the waiter opens the door, looks in and says, "You idiot! You're sitting on the mop bucket." A man came to a tailor and tried on a suit. As he stood before the mirror, he noticed the vest was a little uneven at the bottom. "Oh," said the tailor, "don't worry about that. Just hold the shorter end down with your left hand and no one will ever notice." While the customer proceeded to do this, he noticed that the lapel of the jacket curled up instead of lying flat. "Oh, that?" said the tailor. "That's nothing. Just turn your head a little and hold it down with your chin." The customer complied, and as he did, he noticed that the inseam of the pants was a little short and he felt that the rise was a bit too tight. "Oh, don't worry about that," said the tailor. "Just pull the inseam down with your right hand and everything will be perfect." The customer agreed and purchased the suit. The next day, he wore his new suit with all the accompanying hand and chin alterations. As he limped through the park, with his chin holding down his lapel, one hand tugging at the vest, the other hand grasping his crotch, two old men stopped playing checkers to watch him stagger by. "Maeston, oh my God," said the first man. "Look at that poor, crippled man." The second man reflected for a moment, then murmured, "Eigen, yes, the crippling is too bad. But you know, I wonder, where did he get such a nice suit?" Tommy's mom, Kate, was having a particularly rough day when a public announcement of his bladder's urgency echoed through the supermarket's cereal aisle. "Mommy, I want to pee." The disapproving glares of fellow shoppers were almost as painful as the embarrassment that was turning Kate's face into a human stop sign. She quickly hushed Tommy and instructed, "Listen, Tommy, please don't say that word again. Next time you need to use the toilet, just tell me you have to whisper." Tommy nodded solemnly, like a tiny, serious owl. A few days later, Tommy found himself on a fishing trip with his grandpa. The tranquility of the lake was rudely interrupted when Tommy leaned over and said in a hushed voice, "Grandpa, I need to whisper." Grandpa, clearly caught off guard by this sudden intimacy, replied, "All right, Tommy, come closer and whisper in my ear." A young husband comes home one night and his wife throws her arms around his neck. "Darling, I have great news. I'm a month overdue. I think we're going to have a baby. The doctor gave me a test today, but until we find out for sure, we can't tell anybody." The next day, a guy from the electric company rings the doorbell because the young couple hasn't paid their last bill. "Are you Mrs. Smith? You're a month overdue, you know." "How do you know?" stammers the young woman. "Well, ma'am, it's in our files," says the man from the electric company. "What are you saying? It's in your files?" "Absolutely." "Well, let me talk to my husband about this tonight." That night, she tells her husband about the visit and he, mad as a bull, rushes to the electric company offices the first thing the next morning. "What's going on here? Do you have it on file that my wife is a month overdue?" "What business is that of yours?" the husband shouts. "Just calm down," says the clerk. "It's nothing serious. All you have to do is pay us." "Pay you? And if I refuse?" "Well, in that case, sir, we'd have no option but to cut yours off." "And what would my wife do then?" the husband asks. "I don't know," I guess she'd have to use a candle. Little Johnny is constantly late for school, and what's worse is that he always has a big lie explaining why. The teacher tells the principal that she has had it with his exaggerations. The principal tells her to send Johnny to him the next time he shows up late. He will tell Johnny a lie so big that he will never tell another one. Ever. The next day, Johnny shows up 2 hours late. Johnny says, "I was told 2 hours early today, so I had time to fish in the pond on my way to school. I caught a 17-pound trout and had to take it home. If I hadn't cleaned it and frozen it, my mom would have been angry. That's why I'm so late." The teacher promptly takes him to the principal's office and explains the story to the principal. The principal tells Johnny about his own trip to school that day. He says, "I was walking to school through the park on the trail today when I heard something behind me. I turned around and was shocked to see a giant grizzly bear behind me. He was 24 feet tall and had 6-inch fangs. He was going to eat me, Johnny." Just then, a little dog ran out from the bushes, jumped up, and attacked the bear. The little dog killed the bear, and then ate the whole bear right there in front of me. "What do you think of that, Johnny?" Johnny replies, "Oh yeah, that's my dog Sparky. That's his 3rd bear this week." One afternoon, while going about her daily routine, a wife decided to return home earlier than usual. She was feeling unusually light-hearted and thought she'd surprise her husband with his favorite meal. Little did she know, the real surprise awaited her. As she entered their home, everything seemed quiet. Too quiet. She called out for her husband, but there was no answer. As she walked further into the house, she suddenly heard hushed voices and the unmistakable sound of shuffling feet coming from the bedroom. Curious and with a growing sense of unease, she approached the bedroom door and pushed it open. To her absolute shock, she found her husband in a compromising situation with the maid. The sight left her momentarily speechless, and the room fell into a tense silence. Her husband, caught red-handed, was frozen in place, while the maid, trembling with fear, quickly tried to gather her scattered clothes. The wife's shock soon turned to fury as she demanded an explanation. "What is going on here?" she shouted, her voice shaking with anger. The maid, fearing for her job and desperate to avoid the inevitable fallout, dropped to her knees and pleaded, "Madam, please forgive me. Sir promised me $500 if I entertained him." The wife, though seething with rage, managed to suppress her immediate desire to explode. Instead, she took a deep breath, her mind racing. Suddenly, an idea struck her. With a calmness that surprised even herself, she looked down at the maid and said, "I'll give you $5,000 right now, but you must tell me how you managed to get him interested in the first place." A young widow goes to the funeral parlor to plan her husband's funeral. She met with the mortician who asked her how she wants the body dressed. "He always looked so good in blue. I want him to be buried in a blue suit." This posed a problem as he had been delivered to the funeral parlor in the black suit he was wearing when he died. However, the wife was adamant. "I don't care what it costs," she said, handing the mortician a blank check. "Do whatever it takes." The mortician agrees, and the next day called the widow back. When she arrived, the mortician revealed her husband in very sharp blue suit. The wife is very pleased. "Thank you so much. This is perfect. Whatever it cost, it was worth it." The mortician handed her back the blank check. "There is no charge, madam," he said. "I don't understand," the widow said. "How did you manage this for free?" Well, shortly after you left yesterday, another gentleman was delivered. He was similar in size and build to your husband, and he was wearing a blue suit. I asked his next of kin if they would object to him being buried in a black suit instead of the blue one, and they said they didn't care. So you undressed them and swapped the suits? The widow said. That must have been difficult. Oh no, said the mortician. I just swapped the heads. A girl hits puberty and starts to grow hair between her legs. She asks her mom what's going on, to which she replies, "Don't worry about that. That's your monkey. It's natural that your monkey will grow hair." Later at dinner, the girl tells her older sister, "Guess what? My monkey already started growing hair." Her older sister replies, "That's nothing. Mine is already eating bananas." A man was watching his wife prepare dinner one evening when he noticed something peculiar. As she got ready to fry sausages, she cut off both ends, tossed them away, and placed only the middle portion into the pan. Curious, he asked, "Why do you always cut off the ends of the sausages before frying them?" She shrugged and said, "I don't know. That's how my mom always did it." Intrigued, they decided to visit her mother the next day. The wife asked, "Mom, why did you teach me to cut off the ends of the sausage before frying them?" The mother thought for a moment and replied, "I'm not sure. That's just how my mom always did it. Maybe we should ask her." Determined to solve the mystery, they went to visit the grandmother. The wife asked, "Grandma, why do we always cut off the ends of the sausage before frying them?" The grandmother chuckled and said, "You know, I never really questioned it. That's how my mother did it. Let's ask her." Finally, the 3 generations gathered to visit the great-grandmother at her retirement home. After explaining the question that had stumped them all, the great-granddaughter asked, "Great-grandma, why did you teach us to cut off the ends of the sausage before frying them?" The elderly woman raised an eyebrow in surprise and laughed. "You're all still doing that. I only did it because my pan was too small to fit the whole sausage." Paddy and Murphy were working on a construction site one day when Paddy suddenly had a wild idea. "Murphy," he said, "I've had enough. I'm taking the day off. Watch this. I'm going to pretend I've gone mad." With that, Paddy climbed up onto the rafters, hung upside down, and started yelling, "I'm a light bulb! I'm a light bulb!" Murphy stood there completely baffled as the foreman came storming over. "Paddy, what the heck are you doing?" the foreman shouted. Paddy replied, "I told you, I'm a light bulb." The foreman shook his head and said, "You're clearly not well. Go home and take the rest of the day off." Grinning, Paddy climbed down and headed off site. But before long, the foreman noticed Murphy packing up his tools. "Where do you think you're going?" the foreman demanded. Murphy looked at him and said, "Well, I can't work in the dark, can I?" Paddy sat excitedly on the plane. "Would you like something to drink?" asked the air stewardess as she passed with a trolley. "I'll have a whiskey. Thanks," replied Paddy. "No ice." The stewardess poured his drink before turning to the man next to Paddy who wore a turban. "Anything for you, sir? I'd rather be taken by a dozen brazen women than let liquor touch my lips," replied the man, scowling. Paddy looked at the man, stunned, but then handed his drink back to the stewardess. "Me too, ma'am. I didn't know that was an option." 3 mischievous grandmas were sitting on a bench outside of their nursing home, laughing their heads off like giggling girls. Now, ladies," a nurse said, walking past them. "You need to get your sunshine time before tea and behave." Her words only set them off again. Soon, they spotted an old man walking by and decided to have a bit of fun with him. "We bet we can tell exactly how old you are," one of the grandmas yelled out at him. The old man scoffed. "Oh, there is no way that you can guess it, you 3 old fools." "Sure we can," another grandma insisted. "Just drop your pants and we can tell your exact age." "What?" he exclaimed, embarrassed but intrigued. The old man dropped his pants, the sunlight shining on his bottom. The grandmas stared and whispered among themselves, and then said in unison, "You're 91 years old." "How in the world did you guess?" the old man asked, shocked. The grandmas snickered and replied, "Because we were at your birthday party yesterday," one grandma said, as the other 2 collapsed into giggles again. At Grandpa's 100th birthday celebration, everyone marveled at how athletic and lean he looked. "What's your secret, Derek?" a guest asked. "I'll tell you," Grandpa said, taking a forkful of cake. "I've been in the open air, day after day for some 75 years now." The crowd gasped. "How did you keep up such a rigorous fitness regime?" someone asked. "Well," Grandpa began with a twinkle in his eye as he looked to Gran, "my wife and I made a pledge on our wedding night. Whenever we had a fight, the one who was wrong would go outside and take a walk." In the supermarket, a woman watched a grandfather and his badly behaved grandson with growing admiration. The child screamed for sweets and biscuits, yet the granddad remained calm. "Easy, William, we won't be long." "Easy, boy," he said soothingly. At the checkout, the chaos continued. The little terror of a child threw items out of the trolley, but the granddad's composure never wavered. William, relax, buddy. Don't get upset. Don't get upset. We'll be home in 5 minutes. Stay cool, William. Keep your cool, William." Outside, the woman approached the grandfather. "I know it's none of my business, but you were amazing in there. William is very lucky to have you as his granddad." The old man smiled widely and then chuckled. "Thanks, but I am William. This little guy's name is Comedian." Three elderly sisters, aged 82, 84, and 86, lived together. One night, the 86-year-old drew a bath. She put her foot in and then paused. After a few moments, she yelled down the stairs, "Was I getting in or out of the bath?" The 84-year-old yelled back, "I don't know. I'll come up and see," she said. She started walking up the stairs and paused. Was I going up the stairs or down? Finally, the 82-year-old, sitting at the kitchen table having tea, shook her head. "I sure hope I never get that forgetful," she said. She knocked on wood for good measure and then yelled, "I'll come up and help both of you as soon as I see who's at the door." Two elderly ladies who were friends for decades met several times a week to play cards. One day, during a game, one lady looked at the other, squinting. "Now don't get mad at me. I know we've been friends for a long time, but I just can't think of your name. I've thought and thought, but I just can't remember it. Please, tell me what it is." Her friend glared at her for a few minutes before returning with a sheepish smile. "How soon do you need to know?" she asked. Timmy had heard the playground rumor, Adults had a secret weakness and were easily manipulated. Armed with this groundbreaking intel, he decided to put it to the test. He sidled up to his mom, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Mom, I know everything," he declared dramatically. His mom simply hushed him and slipped him $10. "Don't tell Dad," she whispered conspiratorially. Timmy's tiny mind was blown. This was easier than stealing cookies from the cookie jar. When Dad got home, Timmy repeated his profound statement. "Dad, I know everything." Dad, clearly impressed by this sudden burst of omniscience, handed over $100. "Hush, don't tell your mom," he instructed. Riding high on his newfound wealth, Timmy was feeling invincible. Then the mailman arrived. With the same confidence, Timmy greeted him with, "I know everything, mister." The mailman's eyes widened in shock. He dropped the mail, tears welling up. "Well then, Timmy," he said solemnly, "come give Daddy a hug." Years ago, my grandparents took me on a magical vacation to Disneyland. As we boarded the plane, my grandma was practically bouncing in her seat. She turned to me with a twinkle in her eye. "You're so lucky, Liam," she said. "You've got the Shakespeare seat." "Why is it the Shakespeare seat, Grandma?" I asked her, a little confused. "You're in seat 2B, of course," she exclaimed proudly, her enthusiasm almost infectious. I couldn't help but grin at my dear old Gran. "Don't be silly, Grandma," I said. "All the seats on this plane are Shakespeare seats." She raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "How do you figure that?" "Well, people are either sitting in seat 2B or not 2B. For a moment she was silent, and then she burst into laughter so hearty it made the flight attendants glance over at us. "I'll tell you what, kiddo, you've got me there," she chuckled, ruffling my hair. One day, my little brother, Henry, curious as ever, asked our grandmother a question. "How old are you, Gran?" he asked, bouncing up and down while eating an ice cream. Gran smiled slyly. "A woman never reveals her age, dearest," she said, but Henry was not one to give up easily. "All right, just give me the first digit then," he said. With a sigh, Gran relented. "6, she sighed again. "And the second?" he asked, clearly not satisfied with the answer. Grandma took another deep breath. "7, she said. Henry paused, then innocently proceeded. "And a third digit?" he asked. Grandma gave him a look that could stop time itself, a mix of exasperation and amusement. "I think you've asked quite enough questions for today, young man. Keep asking, and there won't be any more ice cream for you." My brother, undeterred, just grinned at Gran. "I'll get it out of you one day," he said, laughter bubbling. Bubba and Billy Joe were on vacation, walking downtown, window shopping, and they see a sign on a store which reads, "Suits $5.99 each, shirts $1.99 each, trousers $2.49 each." Bubba says to his pal, "Billy Joe, looky here. We could buy a whole gob of these, take 'em back to Georgia, sell 'em and make a fortune. Just let me do the talking, 'cause if they hear your accent, they might think we're ignorant and not want to sell that stuff to us. Now, I'll talk in a slow Texas drawl, so's they don't know he is from Georgia." They go in, and Bubba says with his best fake Texas drawl, "I'll take 50 of them suits at $5.99, 100 of them their shirts at $1.99, 50 pairs of them their trousers at $2.39. I'll back up my pickup and—" The owner of the shop interrupts. "Y'all from Georgia, ain't ya?" "Well, yeah," says a surprised Bubba. "How come y'all knowed that?" "Because this is a dry cleaner's